Hey, this is Steve with Dabble Lab, and today I'm talking with Jennie Stenhouse, who is going to show us some things with Bixby. So she has been dabbling with Bixby, and we've been excited to check out Bixby. And Jennie has agreed to be the expert on Bixby and to show us what it's all about. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennie to tell us what she's going to show us today, and kind of probably start with what we need, and she'll dive into it from there. So, hey, Jennie, thanks so much for sharing your time and showing us Bixby today.
Thanks for having me. And I thought we'd just get started with the very basics. So Bixby is quite different than if you're familiar with Alexa or Google Assistant, in that you only need the thing that they give you, and that's the Bixby IDE. So if we start at the very beginning and go grab that, I'm sure you can put this in show notes or whatever, so that you can easily get this link. And then, so unfortunately, if you're on anything but Windows or Mac OS, apparently it's coming, maybe.
Okay.
But those are your options. I'm on Mac, so we just download this here. It's not that big a download. And currently there are heaps of updates coming through. So it gives you that feeling that maybe something big is coming as they're tidying up their existing code base. So it also updates itself and exciting things like that. So once it's downloaded and installed,
So Bixby Studio is the IDE and everything. So you don't need Visual Studio Code or Atom or any of that.
You need absolutely nothing else. So it's also the like interface for uploading they call their, what in Alexa is skills. In Bixby, it's a capsule. Okay. And so this is also the interface for pushing that into the cloud. So it is everything. It's got your simulator, your debugging. It also has like contacting their developer support system.
Okay.
As well. So it has everything, which is a bit of a thing to get your head around, instead of having to log into like AWS Developer Console and the Alexa Developer Console. It's all here. I
was going to ask so I'm guessing there's like a backend account, right? So you set up something on there, like on the web or something like that this is communicating with?
Yeah, so you need to make a, oh, it's not on this one. You need to make a developer account with Samsung, which we can also link to.
Okay, yep.
And it's really straightforward, and anyone can make one. So you don't need to be with a company or anything. Anyone can make a developer account, which is pretty cool. They seem to be quite keen to build their community at the moment, which is a good thing.
So yeah, so with the Samsung developer account and Bixby Studio, you've got everything, it sounds like.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, and it's all, badly enough, encapsulated in those two things. One of the like things about doing Alexa, for example, is you seem to have 1 billion windows open, unless you're using the code, visual code plugins.
Yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise, you seem to be opening and closing stuff all the time just to keep track of what's going on. Well, here, everything, it's the opposite. You just have one thing open.
I kind of like that.
Yeah. And maybe, of course, and always another browser to look up those things you always forget.
Yeah, your cheat sheet.
Yeah, exactly. Can't go far with that one. Right. So I guess a good place to have a look first is just at the different areas in the IDE.
Okay.
So when you first open it, I'm pretty sure not everything is open. Like I have everything open. I think you get presented with this screen.
Okay.
And everything is also nicely tagged for you. So if you're lost, hover over stuff, and it will also tell you what's going on.
Everything encapsulated.
Yeah. So the starting point would be files, but I also think it's a good idea to have a look at this, which is the simulator, because you will spend a lot of time in here. And you can nest everything and arrange it how you want it to be. So this is a simulator. And it behaves how Bixby behaves on a Note 9. Oh, my things are not compiled.
Kind of looks like Android Studio.
Yeah, I thought so too, yeah. And so it gives you what the appearance would be like on a Note 9 as you go through your stuff. But so currently you can, I'd have to fact check this about what it pushes to, like what devices you can access Bixby 2.0 on. But lots of the stuff at the developer conference last year in November was about pushing to TVs.
Yeah. I would guess that would be a big one for Samsung, huh?
Yeah. It's something ridiculous about their distribution. Like there are more Samsung TVs than the next top 6 makers put together. Like everything is Samsung. So that's a good reason to maybe spend some time with Bixby.
So how are the projects organized? Is there sort of the concept of a project, or is it is there like a project folder? I see the example.
Yeah. So we'll have a look at this one. So when you make a new one, it makes this for you, and
Okay.
like from empty. And I think next time we will go from scratch. There's lots of examples, like you can download existing capsules and sort of go through them.
Okay.
But there's not really many tutorials that work through, you have an empty project to this is your working Bixby capsule. And I thought that'd be a good way to go down because it's so weird to set it up yourself. It's good to have. But let's look at the existing example. This one is called the Space Resorts one, which is basically a hotel request system, but for space, obviously. And so let's close all of this stuff so you can have a little look. Okay. It is separated into these folders of assets, code, model, and resources. So code is where your JS or your JavaScript lives. And that's the stuff that, as a developer, you actually manipulate resources or do your API calls, or that kind of stuff happens in there.
Okay.
So models is probably the hardest thing to get your head around. Models in action. So this all happens in BXB files, which is Bixby specific structure, code structure. And they talk about concepts, and it's kind of like, what's a good way to say? It's like data structures, essentially.
Is it, so I see like primitives like Boolean, string, I'm assuming like string, like you would define your primitive data types?
And like how you're, like they are a lot like structs. So in primitives, you define like what name is. So like in the one you'll see, you'll have like this is going to search for name, use name as a search parameter. And it has a description and a role. And the roles, there's a sort of a set primitives that you can pick stuff from to make your primitives.
Okay, so the book, I'm trying to wrap my head around it, like as an analogy. So the book would be sort of analogous to like an object, and then each one of those EXP files would almost be like a property, sort of.
Yes.
Right.
So what happens if you have so those objects, the primitives. So these are the primitives.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, even if it's in another language, it would still be a primitive. These get moved into the structures. So there's a book structure that then uses those primitives. So let's have a look at what's a good one. Probably this one. The find one is easiest to understand. So it's a space resort and it has certain properties. And those properties are one of your primitives.
I got it.
Yeah. Once you have like this sorted out, it does make things a bit easier. And there's a really good picture, but I'm not quite sure where it is. I'll try and find it and email it to you.
Okay.
And I'll explain it much more succinctly than I am.
Yeah. But I think I get it. So the structures are what I'm thinking of is kind of like objects.
Yeah.
And then the objects I'm thinking of like have properties, which would have types.
Yes.
Got it.
That's right.
Okay.
And then once you have this all set up, it allows Bixby to do the program generation based off what the information you give it here. They call it dynamic program generation. So the magic. This is quite a good image, which I can also give you the link to, that sort of shows you where the stuff is happening.
Okay.
So the natural language processing is this area, and the concept and action models, which we were just talking about, is this central part. And then the code that the developer actually writes is this third part.
Okay.
Okay, and then in between that is where Bixby does this dynamic program generation. Okay, but I can show you the language, which is, let me just find it.
Yeah, so we haven't even talked about that yet, like what language this is all.
Oh, and it's quite strange. Well, as I think when you first open this Bixby IDE, you are a bit like, what is going on? Where is the stuff I'm used to? So you sort of have to unlearn a little bit to relearn. So this is a training example. So all of the blue ones are things that have already been taught to Bixby. So the idea is that you input examples, and Bixby also tries to fill the gaps. So you don't have to put in every possible utterance for your targets. You just have to cover it as much as you can, like good coverage.
Okay.
And then in theory, Bixby's going to fill those gaps and point close enough stuff to your capsule or through your capsule. Yeah. And so, for example, let's do one. What's a good one? Find me hotel. Oh, let's do a really simple one. Hotel. Oh, helps if I spell right. Hotels on Mars. And then you add, and you have to define the main goal, which would be a final space resort. And this is, we're going to put no specialization. We're going to wait to talk about specializations.
Okay.
And then you just highlight would be the Alexa version of a slot. And it will show you a nice little graph. There's lots of pretty graphs to look at in this IDE. And it's showing you here that your value is identified as a planet, and it's going to take you through the find space resorts area of your capsule.
Got it. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah, sorry.
goal is would sort of be like the intent. I guess. Am I getting that right? If this were Alexa developments?
The goal would be the result of your intent. So
Okay.
it would be the actual thing that it spits out.
Okay.
And so the find space resorts is kind of the intent.
Gotcha.
Close enough.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And the result
Yeah.
is space report, which is what the find space resort is fulfilling.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's probably a better way to say it, is that the example space resort that it's going to end up is your complete fulfillment of your invocation.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
And then you need to save it, and then you compile it. And then you can test it by going into your simulator. And it does. It finds you some hotels on Mars.
So would you recommend for somebody that is just getting started or wanting to dabble with Bixby, would you recommend starting with, it sounds like you would, one of the pre-done examples and just kind of poke through there and get familiar with it?
Yes. So there is a really good video.
Like a YouTube tutorial or something?
Yeah. So
Okay.
there is a little bit of a presence of the Samsung developers YouTube channel. And this video by Sarah, she steps through the space resort one really well, and she shows you how to adjust things.
Okay.
So it's a really good one to have a look at. That's what I've been going off.
Okay.
And I would totally recommend investing the time listening to their other videos as well. There's like, if you watch those, you'll sort of understand the whole concept behind how Bixby is different from like Alexa, and what they're trying to do with it, which I suppose is good for aligning yourself and making sure that you're falling into their train of thought. And it also gives you the idea of where you can push it as well. Like, I think I'm definitely one of those people that if you understand the rules, you then know how to break them in an appropriate way.
Yeah, that is how it works.
Yeah. So yeah, I would definitely suggest going there. And then, like I say, the tutorials that I'll do from here will be building up a simple hello world. And we'll do like a retrieval one, because I'd really like to cover the important things. Like, you want to be able to call your APIs. You want to be able to call the databases that you already use in your other skills, or that you're familiar with.
Okay.
You want, and one of the really interesting things about Bixby is that it maintains, it learns about the user as they go. So you can tell Bixby what you want to remember or learn about your user. So if I've said to Bixby 30 times that I want hotels on Mars, it will start to know that I prefer hotels on Mars and offer me those first. Or if I only ever travel with, like, I always want 4 astronauts on my booking, it will automatically start saying, would you like 4? So it's really removing heaps of friction in that sort of interaction. Yeah.
Got it. One quick question that I'm still not 100% clear on. So the programming language, like, this is not JavaScript.
No.
It looks kind of like JSON or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I just talked over you.
That's okay. So all of this, like defining your primitives and structures, the concepts and actions area, all of the stuff in the model area, that's all in BXB, which is Bixby's own, whatever you'd like to say. I suppose it is a language, Bixby's own language, or file structure, maybe. It's a bit of a stretch to call it a language. Yeah. but it is very JSON-like or
Okay.
YML. Yeah. So it's quite easy to adjust to that. I guess one of the things that is a bit of like a road bump, you'd say, is just figuring out what should go where and which versions of stuff you should be using. Yeah, but yeah, so Bixby is the models stuff, and then once you have that structure in place, your own code happens in JS files that everyone you'll be familiar about.
Oh, I feel much better now.
Yeah, it's safe, your safe place.
Yes, I feel much better.
Like, I'm really excited about it. I think there is a lot of potential to be explored in the area. And there's definitely cool things that are going to be coming out this year. Like, they've announced that they're going to release their marketplace later in the year, which would be exciting. And I'm sure further functionality is coming. One of the things I'll try and do up shortly is like, which I feel is missing on lots of platforms, is you just want to know what it can do and what it can't do before you dive into designing your capsules or your skills. You just want to know, yes, it can play long form audio, or no, it can't.
Is that what you've been doing, is sort of getting familiar with what it can do and sort of how it compares to, because I know you've done Alexa development, and have you also done development with like Google Assistant as well?
Not in-depth stuff. Like I've done like a couple of skills, so not as much as the Alexa stuff I've done. But I think that Bixby in functionality feels like it is a bit behind, but they've also got lots of people working on it, and I think it will be brought up to a level of Alexa really soon.
There's a lot of phones out there that will support this, so, and TVs, like we were talking about.
That's a really interesting thing, and they recently said that you could put Alexa or Google Assistants onto your Samsung TV, but they won't be you need a device in your home. So it's not going to be native on, you won't be able to talk directly to your TV.
I think I read that.
And like that step may be one step too many for a whole lot of people, like of having to go through Alexa.
Yeah, and maybe Bixby will talk to Alexa for them, who knows?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, that I quite like that idea of because Cortana has also given up on that, and she's going to talk to Alexa to get answers instead of doing her own answers. I think maybe that's
going to make sense. I mean, just if you think about how it works in the human world, right? If you had an assistant, your assistant might delegate tasks to another assistant. You're just working with one person, and that one person is working with one person or maybe multiple people. But it seems like that might work in the digital assistant world too, where one of the assistants uses the functionality of other assistants.
Yeah, that really does seem to make much more sense, like, than having one assistant to do it all. Not great. It'd be better to have your assistant who maybe, like, that's one thing about Bixby, is that their personalization level and what they can learn about you is really strong. That's something that they seem very focused on. So that the expert on you would be your personal assistant, and they would talk to other expert assistants, like the hotel expert assistant would go and gather the information instead of having this trying to do it all assistant yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, and the other thing, trying to remember as a person all of the different things that the different assistants do, I don't know that that's practical either. But
I'm sure it will be invisible.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, once you decide on your assistant, you hope that that assistant is capable and able to talk to other assistants.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day about how what happens if the assistant learns about you wrong, or like your personalization isn't quite right, and how you'd have to remedy that. Or like, there's probably lots of ethical dilemmas about personalization and the privacy that you give up to have a really good assistant is one that knows everything about you, right?
Yeah.
But where do you draw the lines and things like that? And she mentioned that there'll probably be a job in the future where people train assistants for you, so you can like get an off-the-shelf assistant that already has your likes and dislikes.
Or maybe you would have an assistant to train that assistant, the digital
Oh,
assistant.
dear.
It's very meta.
Totally meta.
I don't know how it all plays out, but I definitely giving up privacy is part of the equation, I think.
Yeah, I can't see a way around that, unfortunately.
No,
but I suppose being aware of it is a good step in the direction.
I wonder, I was talking with somebody earlier today, actually, and he was saying that he felt like there is kind of a hype cycle that needs to play out first, and probably will be some drop off in interest before there's real progress that's made. What do you think about that? Do you think it's overly hyped at this point, or do you think it's just appropriate because it's cool and really as valuable as we want it to be?
I think that the use cases of the technology need to catch up to the hype. I think that it's totally hype at the moment. I think there will be a bit of a decline, but we still haven't, like, it totally happened with the App Store, right? Like for iPhone apps or Android apps, it doesn't matter which. There was like a massive glut of your apps and no billion-dollar app. That's still got to come. That really killer use case where people are, instead of going to get an Alexa device because it's a cheap and quirky thing to have, they're going to get one because they need it to do that use case.
And I think that as you have one, or at least I'm recognizing for me more and more the habits building. So like I use my Alexa to schedule meetings. As I'm talking or doing something, or to add tasks to my to-do, things like that. Once they become habit, you really realize when it's not there. You're like, oh, I need, not that pulling out your phone is that much harder, but once you get in the habit, you'd rather not do that. And
I think that the smartness of the assistant is going to be what wins, not the type of interaction. So like the idea that like Alexa can, or whatever assistant, can notify you when, say, a sale comes up on something that you like. That will, anything that can decrease your daily mental load and still fulfill your wants and needs, that will become the winner.
In certain contexts, like the drive in your car, like that is when that gets out there and at scale, which I'm sure is, this is exciting. I definitely want to spend some more time dabbling with Bixby and checking it out. This is cool.
And the doctor also
things. Not enough hours in the day. It's so many
never
to play with. Well, I do absolutely appreciate you taking the time out to show this. This is super cool, and I'm looking forward to the continuation to learn how to build my first official Bixby capsule. And it's kind of exciting that there isn't that many of them, so you can say, hey, I did one of the first ones. Well, we will be part of making that cool stuff happen. Hopefully not exactly how that worked, but the screens coming together with the voice and being able to get information on demand anywhere at any time in any format. I love that idea.
Yeah, very cool. And like that ability to have a present, like truly multimodality that's across all of your stuff.
Yeah, like
how that behaves in public space as well. It'd be very interesting.
No, I mean, you can imagine the case though, where you're talking to your assistant in the car and you're heading into the office or into a public space where talking's not appropriate, or you want to continue the conversation as a chat. And those kinds of interactions, I think, are what people want. You don't want to leave your home and leave Alexa and not have that until you get back. You want your digital assistant to be with you everywhere, and that requires that it adapt to the context that's appropriate for wherever you happen to be or are. And
and that also that thing of not having to re-enter from the start, so that's one thing that Bixby sort of does out of the box, is that like if I ask for space hotels and then later I go, oh, but I want one on Jupiter, I don't need to go open space hotels. I'd like ones on Jupiter. I can just go, oh, swap that to Jupiter and add 2 astronauts. It will remember that's what I was talking about.
So Jenny, in this tutorial, we went through kind of an introduction to Bixby Studio and sort of a tour through one of the example apps. And I know there's a lot more. And so what are next steps, and where do we go from here?
Okay, so I think the next thing that we'll be doing is we'll be creating a version of a Hello World from scratch. So instead of taking apart an existing example, we'll go through the steps to make it completely from a new project. And then from there, we'll go on into all that stuff that everyone wants to do, like making external API calls and doing a nice rich layout as well.
Awesome. So that's what we have. That's what we have to look forward to. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been great. Like we talked about earlier, I had walked through one of the Bixby kind of capsule, but I really didn't. I just followed the steps, so I honestly didn't really know what I was doing, and this has been so helpful. So I thank you for that. And we are looking forward to the follow-on tutorials.
Cool, it's a pleasure. And as we go through it, hopefully we'll all learn something new.
Looking forward to it. I'm sure we will. Thanks so much.
No trouble.